Hello guys, welcome to SSA Athletics, and in this video we're going to be talking about the high jump.
Don't forget to subscribe, tap that bell and hit like. And also check out our Facebook pages SSA Athletics and SSA Training. Don't also forget to check out the website ssathletics.co.uk.
Now when it comes to the high jump run up, you either go in an arch round or you go at a J or an L. Personally, we want to go round in an arch because we're going to try and utilise the centrifugal forces we create from angular momentum, in other words running round in a circle, to help us convert the momentum forward into momentum going up. The run up is normally, but not always, 7 strides. You move into your run up, you either rock backwards and go forwards, or you walk and roll into the run up, making sure you do 3 strides, and then the 4 strides next you want to be the quickest.
Now at the elite level, some of them may do 3 strides in and then 5 strides before they jump.
Because you want to generate that speed and generate that speed into the bar, or near the bar in this case. Similar to the long jump and triple jump, you're trying to build that speed into the board. In this case, you're trying to build the speed up to the point where you're going to jump.
To practice the run up, we can set up a load of cones and just get the athlete used to running around the bend. When we come to the final part of the approach, the run up, when we come up to the curved part of the run up, we want to keep our hips high. Not only does this help with the jump itself, because you want to be tall as you jump, but it also helps us reach that checkpoint, the checkpoint being the visual cue. This helps to give us a focus point where we know where we got to take off from. The high jump is all about rhythm. That's why you see some of them do a clapping to get the crowd to clap to help them with that rhythm of the runner. It's all about rhythm up to the point of jumping. The last strides, however, are all about speed. You build the rhythm up and then you hit the actual jump itself with as much power, much force and as much speed as you can into that bar. The high jump is all about flow, not Florence, flow, and that helps with that rhythm, getting used to an understanding of the flow of the actual high jump and the rhythm of the high jump. Now you can feel it or you can work on it, work onto that point where you know where you're going to jump, and that will also help you with the rhythm, also help with the muscle memory of knowing how and when to jump. We also want to lean away from the bar when we're running into the bar, when we're on that curve. Otherwise, if you're upright, there's a good chance that when you do take off, your body will move forward or left or right, depending on which side you do your run up on, and you'll effectively jump into the bar. So by leaning away from the bar, we counteract this effect.
Now you can work out your run up in a number of ways.
The most simplest way will be to work it out striding out, going 3 strides out and then speeding up. The other way you can do is the utilization of pigeon steps, but we can't just go straight forwards with the pigeon step. So we go a certain number of distance horizontally and then we go a certain number of pigeon steps vertically. The most accurate way would be the use of a tape measure and measuring it out horizontally and vertically.
As we come into the bar, we want to be leaning to the side as we come up. That way we get more room as we come into the action and we straighten up. It gives us that little bit extra room to go over the bar. Otherwise you will end up jumping into the bar.
About converting the horizontal velocity into vertical height, and we do this from the takeoff by generating power. The less time we spend generating power, the more power we produce. As a result, in elite high jumpers, their takeoff foot is only a fraction of a second spent on the ground. As a result, they produce 8 to 10 times the weight of their body force upon them.
On takeoff, you come around, you plant your foot, you bring your arms up to help generate that height off the ground, and you bring the leg up as you do it, the inside leg as you do it, and you come up into that action. And then as you do, you come up into the action, you're twisting, and you arch your back ready to get over the bar.
In the high jump, on the run up, we have this preparation phase where the body gets round to it and they're basically building the rhythm up to the point of the jump, the point of takeoff, like our athlete here. Every athlete has a different rhythm, and this prevents them coming in too fast or too slow. The body within 0.03 of a second has to twist around in order to be backwards to the bar in order to get a successful flopsily flop. The takeoff actually help us with this with a 20-degree takeoff. This helps us to get round into that position. Athletes will try and do different exercises that work on this kind of power, work on hip power, and also work on rotation in order to help them with their high jump. Doing such of these exercises as shown here, with twisting, working on the back and hip mobility. This is where doing hurdle work can help, but also that Russian horse jump or those lunges can also help as well. Develop those hip areas. What we want also is have a strong core, because there's no point doing all these exercises if we don't have a strong core, otherwise it will lead to injury or poor biomechanics. This is because 8 to 10 times the force of gravity goes through the body, through the ground, through the knees, through the calves, and through that athlete. That can cause a potential injury if that athlete is not strong or powerful or has poor technique. Takeoff foot point is approximately 0.5 to 0.75 meters from the near upright bar. So basically you should be aiming to utilize that as your visual guide point for when you're going to take off from. Now, some people will change where they come from, so they might take off from earlier, they might take off from later. It's all down to the individual. Also, how far you take off from will also be down to the individual. Some, like Barsham, take off really far out, where others do not. And this is to prevent you coming up and landing on top of the bar. When you take off further out, it's a greater opportunity for you to land on top of the bar. But likewise, that depends on the individual. Sometimes if you take off too close to the bar, well, you end up knocking the bar off on the way up. If you take off too far out, you end up knocking the bar on the way down. The takeoff foot should be slightly ahead of the body on takeoff. The takeoff foot should be pointing towards the position halfway between the middle of the bar and the far upright of the bar. So basically, as you come around the bar, you place your foot. You don't necessarily want to have your foot facing towards the actual bed itself. Otherwise, it makes it a lot harder for you to jump and to rotate. But you want it to basically facing the wall or facing almost slightly away from the high jump bed. And from that, we want to have our alignment should be with the takeoff leg as we go around. The hips are forward up until the point where you start to take off, and then that's when you rotate. And your inside shoulder should be up high, and that's why we utilize to throw our arms up high. Not only does it keep us tall, although we are leaning away from the bar, it keeps us tall, keeps our shoulders up high, but it can also help us with the actual height movement motion itself by trying to generate that force upwards. And the hips are 45-degree angle to the bar, and the shoulders are roughly around about 90 degrees. The inside shoulder should not drop into towards the bar, otherwise you will end up flying into the bar, not getting very, very much height, or just knocking the bar on the way up. And the rotation comes from the non-jumping side. The leg nearest the bar is the driven up, bent, and high at the opposite upright. Thigh and foot parallel with the ground, lower leg vertical. Both arms are swung forwards and upwards as mentioned before, and this helps us to drive with the free leg. Some authors and coaches consider the takeoff to be the most important phase in the high jump. This phase is very short, around about 0.18 seconds, and during this phase the athlete may achieve vertical velocities of up to 4 meters per second. The takeoff is the most important part of the actual high jump because that's how we develop the speed into the bar, and of course the more speed you get, in theory you should be able to get more height depending on how you're able to convert that horizontal speed into vertical height and how much power you can generate. And of course strength times speed equals power, so therefore it's the most important phase. The athlete's second to last stride during the approach run, called the penultimate stride, will be longer than the last stride and will begin lowering off the athlete's centre of gravity by flexing the knee, and thusly they end up dropping their hips in order to come up slightly. Now when I was doing it, I was always told to remain tall, but this is a slightly different way of doing so. During the last stride, the foot is slapped down and the knee is extended. The ankle is leaning backwards so that the hips are ahead of the shoulders. The leg during the last stride acts as a lever while the other leg is swung up forward, allowing the athlete to jump, and that's when you come up tall. Now when we run in, we want to be arched away from the bar. So as we come up into the height, we end up coming up straight and end up going straight over it rather than straight into the bar.
This film shows the use of the circle that passed through the takeoff footprint and made the best possible fit with the second, third and fourth footprints before the takeoff. Notice that the next to last footprint was ignored. You can now see the footprints of the 8 athletes analyzed at the 1991 World Championships and the circular arc that was fitted to the curve of each approach. The drawings show that all the jumpers in the sample followed very closely the modeled circular path in the last steps of the approach, although, as expected, in several jumps the next to last footprint was clearly outside the general curve. Some jumpers, like Austin, followed very closely not only the curved section, but also the straight section of the path modeled by the computer. Other jumpers, like Drake, started the straight section of the approach somewhat farther outward than predicted by the computer model and later converged into the final circular path. Jumpers like Dalton Grant and Troy Camp make a sudden change in the direction of running at the start of the curve before settling into the final curvature of the approach. Drawing and designing the approach is not allowed in competitions. Nevertheless, athletes and coaches always strive for its perfection arc. In the transition from the straight section to the curve, a force that tends to pull the body away from the circular arc affects the jumper immediately. This force is called the centrifugal force. A jumper then leans towards the center of a fictional circle, thus boosting the centripetal force. Centripetal force tends to make the body move towards the center of a fictional circle. However, an even balance of these forces puts the jumper in the optimal position for the circular run. Everything has to be optimal at the takeoff. The lean, the centrifugal and centripetal forces, the speed and the final angle of jumper's approach. At the takeoff, the centripetal force weakens and the centrifugal force increases to its maximum. As a result, the jumper moves away from the path he was following. Why is this important to take into consideration? After a jumper leans in the curve, his foot gets in an unnatural position. His feet and ankles are under tremendous pressure during this part of the approach, and he experiences foot torsion. So, considering an increasing amount of compensatory lean and final approach speed, a slip of the foot is likely to occur. However, the final approach speed will not be reduced since it's the most significant part of the approach. Therefore, the radius of the curve and the width of approach will be increased. As a result, the compensatory lean and the pressure on the jumper's foot will be reduced.
Now the arms, and we need the arms because that helps us to get that vertical height. Basically what we're doing when we're doing high jump, we're transitioning in from a horizontal speed and we're converting that horizontal speed into vertical height, and the arms help us to do this. We need big arms, big wide arms that help drive up and help us get that height, either on the takeoff or leading in a big windmill action to help you drive forward, drive those arms up to help get over the bar. Both arms are swung forwards and upwards as mentioned before, and this helps us to drive with the free leg. The Frosby flop is quite a unique technique. Yes, there has been many other different techniques in the past, but the Frosby flop allows your centre of mass to effectively leave the body. It's underneath you, and therefore your centre of mass is underneath the bar with a back arched at 140 degrees. That means you don't have to get substantially higher over the bar in order to clear it. You just need to flop yourself over the bar. The Frosby flop was invented by Dick Frosby, who competed at the Mexico Olympics, and this technique has allowed athletes to jump substantially higher than they've ever been before.
We can practice the Frosby flop action, in this case of the actual jump. Not the actual jump, but the actual going round of the action and the takeoff. By going round, having a little box there, and just practice skipping up, jumping up, and almost practice as if you're going over the bar, but you're not actually going to the bar, you're not actually doing a jump, you're just practicing that little beginning action. We want to bring the knee up high, because if we bring the knee up high, we generate more height. That force of bringing the knee up gets you that more action going up higher. The vertical action we require. On takeoff, you come around, you plant your foot, you bring your arms up to help generate that height off the ground, and you bring the leg up as you do it, the inside leg as you do it, and you come up into that action. And then as you do, you come up into the action, you're twisting, and you arch your back ready to get over the bar. And when it comes to the actual jump itself, we've got to have good distance between the bar. Some jump really far out, the elite athletes do. The amateur athletes are not going to jump so far out. And what is often doesn't get talked about is the travelling across the bar itself. If we don't take off early enough, we will end up crashing into the bar, we end up landing on top of the bar, which will also, we want our highest point to be as we're going over the bar itself. Before the bar, we end up landing on top of the bar and knocking the bar off, and therefore not getting as high a jump.
Or alternatively, we're knocking the bar on the way up if we are too close. We also got to think about is flicking the legs over, arching the back, flick the legs over, and that way you prevent hitting the bar. The Frosby flop is the only technique that involves us going backwards first, and that requires a rotation. An angular velocity of plus 20 degrees would mean we would over-rotate and thusly not necessarily get as high. With high jump, it is a rhythm event about getting smooth and getting that action right. If we don't get the action particularly right, then the jump may not be as successful. Now that was all good deep stuff, and if you want to learn more about the long jump, importantly, click this link here. I'm Adam McCarthy of SSA Athletics. I hope you enjoyed this video. Check out all our socials and subscribe. And as always, I will see you in the next one. Bye.